dwarven stronghold of Erebor, the Lonely Mountain, the greatest dwarven kingdom left in Middle-earth, home to some dwarves, a dragon, and, a little bit of gold. We of course know the iconic kingdom of Erebor from the Hobbit trilogy, but it actually takes place to a massive siege and a battle during the War of the Ring. Of course, the Battle of Dale. And thanks to GW's latest supplement, The Defense of the North, we can now play out these fantastic battles in tabletop form. Problem is, Games Workshop doesn't make any Erebor scenery, so we're gonna have to make some ourselves. Now, before we go hacking and slashing into our foam, we have to work out a foundation for the board itself. The outside of Erebor, the Erebor Valley Plain, should be fairly simple, with a few rocky outcrops and a bit of land depressions and elevation. And that's what we're going to be doing in today's video. We're going to be doing a tester to see what the Erebor Valley, how I want the Erebor Valley to look, and give me your thoughts and feedbacks as well in the comment section below, guys. Also, make sure to check out part 1 of building Erebor, where we've started on the front gate. But if I've got to be honest, it's the last time we did that video was almost 2 years ago now, guys. It was about 1.5 years ago, and it looks quite different. If you guys haven't seen already, we do a live stream every Sunday night, or usually every Sunday night. And over the last few weeks, I've been doing Helmsweed, but I've also been doing Erebor. So make sure to come and check out the live streams there, guys. It's always a lot of fun chatting with you guys and just seeing what I can get done. You guys can try and help me out of what I'm doing in these boards as well. Now, to start off with any board, we need a foundation, and as this originally was guys, going to be a tester for the board to come, I didn't really feel the need to do like a wooden boarding or like a wooden frame for it. I honestly don't have the materials to do that at the moment anyway. So as I said, if this was going to be a tester, I didn't really need to see the worry. Again, I'll emphasize was going to be, and you'll see why later on in the video. Now, our foundation is green structural XPS foam. Now, this stuff is great for this kind of stuff like land forming, stuff that's, you won't be able to see the foam part of, because we're going to be covering it later in modeling compounds, which is great stuff, by the way. But it's not great for little fine details like stone carvings, that kind of stuff. But like I said, it is great for this kind of stuff. So I started off with the 2 boards. This is going to be 2x4 sections. This is how my foam comes at the local hardware store. So you can easily pick this stuff up at local hardware stores. And I did a very faint sketch of what I wanted the board to look like: hills, mountains, depressions, all that kind of stuff, guys. Using more structural XPS foam, this is where I started to build up the layers of the board, making sure that if there's a feature that's going to be crossing 2 boards, that it's going to line up properly. You have to make sure that I always say measure twice, cut once, or measure 3 times, cut once, guys. You don't want to make mistakes at this point. Now, again, I'm not doing both parts of the board in this video. I was only originally, like I said, doing a tester for one part. So if I ruined it, I wouldn't ruin both sides of the board, and I can just remake a new one. So that's why you're only going to see one part of this board. I will be doing the second part in a separate video later on. So once I had all the features of the board, I cut them up, glued parts that needed to be glued together, but I didn't glue them down to the board straight away. I needed to see how this would actually work on the board. Also, you guys can see I cut a few features on the board itself. This is also the point where I cut some depressions into the board, just using a little bit of craft knife, just going into the board a little bit, just to get a little bit of undulation across the board, so it's not just one flat surface. Alright, so guys, now that we have the big offcuts ready to go, the big emplacements are all good to go. Now it is time to start doing some bit more detailing, I guess. And you guys can already see I've already started doing here, trying to integrate the landforms into each other. That'll all be covered up with modeling compound once we get to that stage. You guys can see I've already made a few mistakes here and there, but that's the way of board building. It is learning as we go. This is actually probably my 3rd configuration ever since I started doing this board, so it's definitely a work in progress.
So once it was stuck down, I found the heaviest books I could find. Obviously, our Middle Earth books are quite heavy, so this is great to weigh the whole thing down so it doesn't move, because sometimes when foam is gluing together, it can move, it can separate at some points. So just making sure it's all nicely weighed down evenly across all the foam, and you'll have no problems there. Now we come on to the fun bit, rock molds. Now I've got some rock molds here from Woodland Scenics, just picked up at your local hobby shop. I've had them, for quite a while now. I haven't really used them since now, but they are great. I'm going to be using them on boards so much more now, guys, because as you guys will see, it turned out great on this board. So just start using a plaster of Paris type mold. I just use a cheap one from the hardware store. You can get more expensive ones and they'll be more fibrous, so the paint will still stick, but these ones worked out great. So it was a really cheap bag of plaster, really nice and cheap, and just follow the instructions and you'll have no problems there. So I just made up a big batch of rock molds, and I probably did 5 or 6 batches of rock molds, maybe even more, to be honest. Just really cast it up quite a lot so I have the variety of what I need. Now this is the fun part, guys, because this is where you can really, your artistic interpretation can come into play. This is a lot of fun, guys, I have to tell you. And this is also where, if you have had any mistakes like cutting hills, crags, all that kind of stuff, you can easily fix this up with rock molds, and it's going to look fantastic, especially when we put the modeling compound on after this. And just, have a play and just see how everything works. You kind of want everything that you want to rock, like hills, mountains, that kind of stuff. Every surface that you want to rocks needs to have at least some of the rock mold on it. You can obviously do some sculpting with modeling compounds, but just it's really nice to just have rock molds all along those areas, and you can blend it in with the modeling compound next. And again, this was just stuck on with Well Bond, left overnight to dry, and it will be perfect, good to go. You guys can use a little bit of hot glue. Just make sure that if you use hot glue that you just give a bit of a cool down for about 10 seconds before you stick it on, otherwise it will melt the foam. And if you make any mistakes at this point, guys, if you haven't covered up enough, or if you're not really happy at this point, don't worry, because like I said, modeling compound will fix everything. And speaking of modeling compounds, that is what we're on to next. So Geek Gaming Scenics modeling compound is absolutely fantastic. You just need to follow the instructions, mix it up until you go, put it into a nice container that you don't mind getting a bit dirty, and maybe just have a dedicated container for modeling compound, because it is going to make quite a mess if you haven't really done it before. And this is actually one of my first times, actually. It's actually my second time using modeling compounds, so I'm not too experienced at it, but I'm really happy with how this turned out. So just you mix it up until you make a thick porridge consistency, and you've got about 15-minute working time. It was actually in the middle of Australian summer here, so I had about a 5 or 10 minute working time. But if you're in a nice cool area, you'll have a little bit longer working time for this. And at this point, guys, this is where you go to town on your board. This is where you fix any mistakes. This is where you fill in any rocks and crevices that you thought that aren't too great. You guys can see that I've done a few depressions on the board that I'm not too happy with, that have gone a bit too deep. Again, modeling compound fixes this all the way. Any joins in the board where you guys can see the top layer of foam and the bottom layer of foam, there's like a bit of a gap there. This is where you put some modeling compound, just slap it on the board and just smooth it out as well. Using wet hands as well is a great job for this, guys. Putting some modeling compound, smoothing it out, and then going back with a damp hand and smoothing it out as well. Really does work, guys. And I couldn't recommend this stuff enough. It's also quite fibrous, just like the plaster of Paris. So when we go on to wash the rocks and paint up those awesome rocks and the board itself, it's going to work nicely in cohesion with each other. And like I said, after about 15 minutes, guys, it'll be ready to go. It'll cook off nicely, and you can just go back in with a damp finger or some sculpting tools and do a bit of sculpting yourself if you if you're not too happy with it. Once it is dry, though, I would recommend that you get like a brush and just brush off any of the flaky bits that do inevitably come on with this modeling compound. I usually give it about 24 hours to dry. I gave this about a day to dry, so just come back after 24 hours, brush it off with the brush, and you are good to go. Once that modeling compound was cooked off, like I said, left it for about 24 hours after I brushed it all off. Then I came in with a texture paint. I got this bucket from the local hardware store. You know, it wasn't too expensive, but you know, I've had this, you know, for a couple of years now. It's done quite a few things for me. So yeah, just getting some texture down onto the surface itself. We will be doing some texture like with modeling with Geek Gaming Scenics, but it doesn't hurt to have a ground texture essentially, so you're not going straight onto the foam, so there's like a protective layer onto the foam itself. Then using some ordinary household paint, I just, you know, did a dark brown, painting all this over the texture. I would leave the rocks again like with the texture paint and with this paint, do not cover the rocks. You need them as they are. Don't cover them with any paint at all. You want them to keep their fibrous thing. If you put paint over it, you basically have a film over it, and over the rocks and over the modeling compound. Anything that you want to be rock, do not cover this with paint. Now at this point we are going to paint the rocks. Any rocky bits that you want to make rocky, this is the point where we do it now, guys. So we're going to do a technique called leopard spotting, and this is when we get 4 different types of paint. We've got like a dark brown, we've got an ochre, we've got like an orangey brown, really any type of color that you want, but this is the kind of the colors that I use. And this is just ordinary household paint, guys. You know, it's really cheap paint from the dollar shop, and you really want to water this down, guys, like a 5-to-1 mix of paint to water, and you know, maybe even more, to be honest. But you wanted this to be like a wash, and this is going to start, we're going to do a technique called leopard spotting. Now this is, I start off with a yellow ochre type of paint. You guys can use whatever paints you really have available if you really want to, but this is the way that I usually do it. Just get a yellow ochre type of paint, and just cover about 30% of your cliffs with this. And it doesn't need to be uniform, just dab it all over about 30% of your cliffs. Make sure there's still a lot of white stuff left. After that, I use like an orangey, browny, tanny type of paint, and use this to cover about another 30% of the cliffs. And then after that, I use like a really dark brown or like a mocha brown kind of paint, and just wash this all over the cliffs. And this will blend the two colors together. Now at this point, it doesn't look great, does it? It doesn't look great, but once you bring the black wash in, which will be next, it'll really tone those colors down and blend everything together. And don't worry about any of the washes going on to the textured paint. This will just make the blending a bit more natural. Now this is when we start our dry brushing. Now you can leave it like this if you really want to, but I prefer to dry brush up from this. Again, this the color at the moment, it does look a bit you know, not too great, but once we start the dry brushing, then we can it'll definitely start to pop. So start off with the dry brushing. Obviously you guys know how to dry brush by now, but get some paint on your brush, and then wipe away most of it, and flick the tops. Now this first dry brush is going to be Mechanica Standard Grey. Again, you can use household paints if you want. You know, get some Dulux tester pots from your local hardware store. Take some of the colors that you need down there, and they'll mix them up for you. But get some Mechanica Standard Grey. Do this a really overbrushed. You really want to get this almost everywhere, to be honest. Make sure that some of that color is still showing through. But this is more like an overbrush, more than a dry brush. You really want to get this over everywhere, you know, even into some of the recesses if you really want to. Just really go at it your own pace. Like, there's really no technique to this. You know, you're your best own, you are your best own judgment. So really go to town on this, or you know, go really lightly. It's really up to you. Now, of course, this is near Erebor, so I want to get a bit of green into these rocks. Now, of course, we could have used that with the washes, but I thought that would have been a bit too stark. So instead, I'm going to dry brush a bit of Caliban green into the recesses of these rocks, just to get a bit of green in there. You know, it's not going to be very subtle, but of course, it's going to be near Erebor, where it's got, you know, some of that marvelous green marble. So you'd expect that some of the rocks outside of Erebor would have that hint of green in there. Now, next up, we're going to bring Dawnstone into this next dry brush, and this is where we will be turning into a dry brush. Just getting like the flat surfaces, the tops, just not as heavy as that Mechanica Standard Grey dry brush, but you wanted to make sure that this is more pronounced though. And as you guys can see just from these first couple of dry brushes, that the rocks are coming to life now. Now you really want to bring a natural element into these rocks, so bringing back our flesh rather than a white. It's more like an off-white, as you know. Bringing this as the next highlight really makes the rock pop, and it doesn't bring, you know, it's not like a light gray, it's more like a really creamy color, so it's a bit more natural. Now, time for probably the best part of the build, guys, and it's time for your really for your creativity to come out. It is time for base readies. Now, I'm probably never going to be doing boards another way now because how good these turned out. Again, really couldn't recommend them enough. I don't really use them on miniatures, but I think for boards like this, they really turned out really well for me. So getting a bit of base readies here, I had a few things. I had some city rubble for like the base layer of like the rocks and stuff, trying to get some rocks in there. Also had rugged fields because I think this looked you know, a bit similar to what you know, what we see at the Erebor Valley in The Hobbit. Also had some light green scatter foam blend flock, as well as green foam scatter blend flock. Also had some static grass flock from Woodland Scenics, the burnt grass variety, and I had a few other things lying around that I kind of played with. And that is really what it is, guys. It's just playing around, you know, using the Geek Gaming Scenics base ready glue, having a nice good coat of that. I really started off with the city rubble first. You know, make sure the big rocks, you know, I kind of sifted it out a little bit, so I had the big rocks at the base of the hills, like as if, you know, some rocks have fallen off from those cliffs, and then use the rest of it, like the really fine stuff, to sprinkle all over the rest of the board. And really, guys, it's just a big back and forth of, you know, trying different things, going, you know, trying different blends, and going back and forth. There really is no system to it. There is no there's no right or wrong. So after I mixed the city rubble and the rugged fields together, I did a nice big soak of matte silic sealant to hold that all down together. And after that was dried, I put on the any of the flocks that I was using, like the burnt flocks and the foam scatter. Just mixed it all around just to see how it all worked together. And then I also applied snow effects. Now, obviously, we know from the films that Erebor is very, you know, I was definitely inspired by the films, going back and forth to see how they you know, how the ground texture looks, to try and match it quite, you know, quite accurately, I should say. And again, guys, it was just a big back and forth of, you know, if something was a bit too green at some point, I put a little bit of rubble or a bit of rugged fields in. You know, if it was a bit too rubbly, then I put some green in, and then putting the snow effects around, putting the snow effects onto the cliffs themselves, I think really elevated them as well. And with what has turned out, guys, I am very, very happy with how this has turned out. Again, this was going to be a test piece, but I think this is how I'm going to do my board. I think this is exactly how I want this board to look. Really happy with how it's turned out. I think it really matches the aesthetic of the Erebor Valley. Definitely while I was doing the base ready bits, I had the film on stills of what the Erebor Valley looks like just looking at the land, just to see what it looks like, and I think it worked pretty well. Yeah, definitely really happy with how this has turned out. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and like I said, we'll be doing the next part of the board, and hopefully look even better when it's all put together. And then when we finally move back onto the actual Erebor, which you guys would see in the live stream, so make sure to go check out the live streams if you haven't already, usually every Sunday. So thank you so very much for watching, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you got any comments, leave them in the comment section below. Leave the video a like if you enjoyed. If you didn't, leave a dislike as well. Let me know what you guys thought in the comment section below. But thank you so very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one, and as always, happy gaming.